broadcasting and streaming live all across America. This is Home Talk USA with Michael King. Join us as we discuss topics pertaining to your home with industry-leading experts. Hosted by Michael King, a licensed general contractor with more than 30 years of experience in home improvements and author of Contracting with the King. This hour is brought to you by HomeTalk.expert. Do you have questions about your next home improvement project or home repairs? Now you can chat with verified home repair and home improvement experts in just minutes. Get the help you need with HomeTalk.expert. That's HomeTalk.expert. We invite you to listen at HomeTalkUSA.com, one of the best resources for home improvement information around today. Your best life begins with your best home, and there's no place like Home Talk. That's HomeTalkUSA.com. And now, HomeTalk.expert proudly presents the #1 home improvement radio program in the country with the man from the Bayou Land. Your host, the Cajun Contractor, Michael King.
Yahoo! Welcome to Build with America, right here on the Home Improvement Broadcasting Network. I'm the Cajun Contractor, Michael King, along with my partner in crime, my second partner in crime, Mr. Greg Owens, the Made in America guy himself. Greg, welcome to the show, my buddy. I know you got a jam-packed hour, but I'm going to have to read this little promotional thing. We got to pay some bills here, you know what I mean? But we have, this hour is going to be sponsored to you by Product Quick Start. Noah McNeely and Product Quick Start has been specialized in meeting the prototyping and manufacturing needs of all of our inventors. And there's only one company to think about when it comes to Pro Quick Start. But Greg, we got a full hour going on, a lot of information. The guest that you're going to have, Mr. John Gardner, he was on last week, right? And
correct.
Y'all have all sorts of information that we have to put out there, right?
Well, he wrote a fantastic book called Manufacture Local, How to Make America the Manufacturing Superpower of the World. And we only got through chapter 1 last week because it was so interesting. So we're going to try and see if we can get through the rest of the chapters and all right, educate our audience on all of the wonderful thoughts that he has about making things in America again.
Well, I got to hop a big bird right now, and I have to go to a national conference, and I'm going to turn over the show to you, and I know the show's in good hands, so I'll see you next week, Greg.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And
thanks, Michael.
John, welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Greg. I really appreciate being allowed back, and keep me in line here on the questions so I don't ramble or stray too far.
Oh, well, I'll do my best. But, we left off, we were discussing about your book, and one of the main things that you tried to do in your book was not just to ramble on about sound bites like some of the politicians do, but actually propose some solid policy changes that we need to make in order to actually get something done, right? So one of those keys was to shift the tax burden away from production and consumers and reestablish tariffs on imports. And, that would help level the playing field for American manufacturers. That's a buzzword you hear all the time, but that's how to actually do it. It puts spendable dollars back in the pockets of consumers by lowering the taxes on them and using tariffs to make up those revenue shortfalls. And then it shifting that tax burden up to imported goods will shift production from overseas back to the USA, creating jobs and bringing back manufacturing both in scope and in scale. So the next chapter of your book, why make it in America? So talk to us a little bit about your concept of the circular economy.
Yeah, I think one of the key points here is that America has the largest consumer base in the world. We consume more goods than anywhere else in the world. And we talk a lot about how we're a capitalist society. Yet in capitalism, if you have something of value, you charge a fee for it. You don't give it away for free. And tariffs should be the fee to enter our market and have access to our consumers. And so we have bound ourselves. America has bound ourselves to tariff at the lowest rate in the world, in what is the World Trade Organization. We've bound ourselves. I think it's 3.4% to do that, where other nations have not obligating themselves to tariff at the lowest rate. And it's curious why we do that, because American manufacturers then have to pay so much more to produce a good. But back to the circular economy, when you spend $1 here in America and it's for a made in America company, that dollar then goes to pay a salary to an American employee, and the goods bought by that American employee with the dollar at the grocery store, hopefully made in America goods there, and that dollar stays within our ecosystem rather than leaving our country. There was an old ad that's actually in my book. It was for Made America toys, and it shows Uncle Sam with a bunch of kids sitting on his lap, and they say, let me find it because it's such a, I learned a lot from these old ads, but it says, buy American-made toys. See that your money is helping America grow. Buying foreign toys won't do it. That way your money goes overseas and it doesn't come back. By insisting on American-made toys, your money stays here, every bit of it to work for your own country and for you. And every dollar we send to Communist China allows Communist China to invest in more weapons to then try to attack Taiwan or attack America. We're helping invest in other countries with our dollar rather than investing in our own production capabilities, which serve our own consumer base, which is the largest consumer base in the world.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, next topic that I got out of that chapter, I'm going to have Harry Moser on.
Yeah, I love Harry. Brilliant guy.
Harry's a good friend of ours.
Way smarter than I'll ever be.
Well, he's going to do a deep dive into the topic of, the real cost of making things overseas, because a lot of people, particularly the young buyers, will take a look at the FOB, wherever it is, cost, and not understand not just the cost of getting it here, but the risks that your company is facing with IP theft and the supply chain issues that can really tarnish your brand from a customer service standpoint. Do you have anything to add to that in summary of what it really costs?
I have a whole lot to add. I asked this a friend of mine I admire very much. He's a CEO of a very large manufacturing company. He's one of the best people I've ever met. I was talking to him about the true cost of offshoring, and he came up with this list that I put in my book, and he had so many things on it that I would have never thought of. The cost to have the cost of translators, the cost to travel overseas, the cost of time spent fixing supply chain issues and gaps in production, the cost of obviously IP theft, and specifically in Communist China, the cost of he went on and on and on. It's this whole list of, he calls it the cost of list, but not to mention, the IP stolen from America has been called by the largest transfer of wealth in the history of civilization. And so when we open up our society to predatory nations, we are crippling our nation's future, because the future is built on innovation. And when they take that innovation from us and use it for themselves, we lower ourselves intentionally. So we need to have some protections in place as far as tariffs, but also we need a bit more of a closed society. Everybody's always pushing against that. But warfare has gone from hard kinetic warfare to entropic warfare, which is like, information warfare, cyber warfare. There's so many different types of warfare in there. So we actually need to be a lot more guarded than we need. In World War II times, there wasn't cyber warfare. We didn't have to worry about that. So that is one of the cost ofs. The cost of national security is, to me, the one that is like the cost of that you can't come back from. I don't know if I'm making enough sense there, but of all the many costs that there are, the cost of national security when we offshore is the one that kills a country.
Well, that's exactly that. That's sort of one of those patriotic things that may not make it onto the page that companies are reviewing when they go to make a decision on whether to make something here or overseas. And we've heard a lot of conversations over the past couple of years about how companies that used to be extremely patriotic and depend on that, made in America, providing jobs, have sort of now they're multinationals, and they don't really have borders, and they don't have any loyalty, and they make greedy decisions based on only themselves. And other countries don't operate like that, particularly
Japan They won't buy. I've had every country practically buy my broach tool, and Japan has never even acquired one. So they do not buy foreign made goods. They do not. And they're a natural resource poor nation. They don't have a ton of oil and forests and all these things. They produce what they need, and they're very protective of that. You're 100% right about that, Greg.
Right, and we're going to come back here in a minute. We need to take a break and pay some bills, but we're going to go a little bit deeper dive into the national security implications of making it in America. I'm Greg Owens. I'm here with John Gardner, author of the book, Manufacture Local, How to Make America the Manufacturing Superpower of the World. We'll talk to you in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to the Made in America Hour. I'm Greg Owens. I'm here with John Gardner, author of the book, Manufacture Local, How to Make America the Manufacturing Superpower of the World. Welcome back, John.
Thanks again, Greg.
And just for our audience that's now very curious about this wonderful book that you've written, where do they find your book?
Amazon or Barnes & Noble's, Walmart, you can put it in the search bar, or bookshop.org is a good one for local people, but those are the big platforms.
Right, and we had a discussion the other day. We're going to have to hammer out the details because I want to have it on the Liberty Tabletop website. Because
thank you for that. I'll anything I can do. I really appreciate the offer. That's very kind of you, Greg.
They'll eat it up. But anyway, industry is national security. We were just talking about that, and it's such a critical issue that people have sort of lost sight of the fact that as we lost our industrial base, we have really put our military into a conundrum because they can't make an F-18 without certain parts that we no longer make here. And that includes certain types of steel, titanium, other things that are needed to manufacture those parts. And as we learned during the pandemic, you don't have to make every part in an F-16 and cut that off in a time of war to be able to prevent the United States from making F-18s. You just need to do one thing like they did in automobiles, and that was if you can't put a chip in a car. It was unbelievable driving through Ohio, seeing the lots full of cars where they would take a chip out, they would drive the car into a lot, pop it out of there, bring it back over to the manufacturing facility, the auto assembly plant, and just run them in circles until they could get those chips in. So elaborate a little, talk to us a little bit more about your perspective on that.
Well, I mean, I think it's so underrated how industry supports the military. And you have no military if you don't have industry. You don't have a military. You have a bunch of people that want to fight, but if they don't have goods, they don't have weapons, food, clothes, transportation, then you don't have a military. So industry is a prerequisite of any nation having a military, period. You can't replace having an industry in any way in a time of war because supply chain routes from other countries get cut off. Look how vulnerable the UK, Great Britain, and Soviet Union were during World War II. The U-boats in the Atlantic kept a lot of our Liberty ships. If our Liberty ships hadn't been sending millions of tons of goods to the UK, they would not have survived. And even that with the U-boats trying to stop them, the wolf packs from Nazi Germany. So that being said, I really had a wake-up call as to how sad our industrial base is, and the understanding and recognition. When the pandemic hit, I got a letter from the undersecretary. I'm sure it wasn't from him personally, but the Secretary of Defense office that said, "You're an essential supplier due to your work for the U.S. Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. You are not allowed to close down." And that was great because my sales dropped about 60% when the pandemic was announced, and I was wondering, what am I going to do? Nobody knew how long this was going to go on. So I went to talk to, after a few months, I went to talk to lenders because there wasn't a lot of loans from the government in place then. And all the SBA lenders said, well, your letter doesn't mean anything. And this is a quote, we'd rather lend to a Taco Bell, a normal business like a Taco Bell is what they said. Yet I'm supplying the defense industrial base. So one of the proposals in my book is that we have a specialty lending class for those who supply the defense industrial base. Because right now, a lot of those aren't even identified in a way. I've sold to every branch of the military and multiple, the U.S. Fleet Readiness Center in Jacksonville, Florida, the U.S. Surf Warfare Division, the U.S. Naval Nuclear, a bunch of different divisions. Yet I get zero help. If I went out of business, the U.S. military could care less. Yet when they want my product, they want my product. There's no support from them.
So one of these days we're going to have to come back and talk about some of the specific things. There are programs in place, and history tends to repeat itself. Way back when, in the Revolutionary War, this is when the American military really started to understand that they couldn't be dependent on their adversary in times of need. That sort of repeated itself during World War II. And as a result of this, we have things like the Berry Amendment, which are designed to protect key industries. We have the Buy America and the Buy American Act. And that's a topic that we could spend a whole show on. But I want to move on to how to solve America's skilled labor shortage. So let's maybe finish up this segment talking a little bit about trade schools and how not only private industry and companies, but can also join with local and federal government, which would have to fund this to really rebuild our labor force, which over the course of the last 20 years, not a lot of people have gone into mechatronics, the trades. Not a lot of people have gone into industrial cost accounting and some of the other specialty professions that are required to have a strong industrial base.
I think it's a tragedy that most kids come out of high school don't know the manufacturing industry exists and that you can make six figures within an industry in faster than maybe you can even get out of college. I think that opportunity needs to be presented to the kids of today. I think I'm a big fan of experience. Trade schools are good and they have their place, but no school, trade school, college engineering programs are going to have production. And production and experience in production is where, when things go wrong, is where you learn.
Right. Okay, well, we have to take a short break here. We'll be right back with more from John Gardner. And see you soon. Welcome back to the Make America Hour. I'm here with John Gardner, author of the book, Manufacture Local, How to Make America the Manufacturing Superpower of the World. We were talking about the skilled labor shortage here in the United States and the lack of trained employees in mechatronics and all of the different areas that are required to have a strong industrial base. One of the things I wanted to bring up is we're a country of immigrants. And when these immigrants came over, a lot of times they brought skills and experience with them and participated in manufacturing jobs. And not only that, but there's also the concept of you can automate to a certain extent, but you need some of those. And I really hate to call it unskilled laborers because they quickly become quite astute at what they're doing, but they're very necessary. The manual type thing that it's hard to find people who want to do that anymore. What role, if any, do you think immigration can play in helping us build back 5 million jobs that we've lost over the course of the last several decades?
Well, I think the immigration of today is not the immigration of our great-grandfathers. The Industrial Revolution started in England and went to Europe, and then the immigrants that came from there when we had less of a population had already had that, machining and factory skill set that they brought with them. That was already part of the culture over there. You look at what Andrew Carnegie's parents were immigrants when he came to Pittsburgh. A lot of the migrants from the Eastern Europe. It's funny, a lot of the most skilled people I know in the industry still have that kind of Stanislavska and the kind of like Eastern European last names with an SKI at the end, because their family's been in the industry so long, and they're kind of in the older school cities. They really have a heritage there. Today's immigrants are not that. They don't come from a manufacturing background or an industrialized society. Mostly, the countries they come from are generally not industrialized, and so I think for me, I'm visiting Ohio where I grew up, and I drive around my small town, and I think you could put 5 manufacturing plants here, and you still will not employ enough people that need jobs, good jobs that pay well. The workforce is already here. You drive around anywhere between Ohio and Pennsylvania, where I'm at right now visiting my family, and you'll find all the workforce that you need, especially in the small towns. Like my grandparents grew up in Arnold and New Kensington, about 20 minutes across the river from Pittsburgh. You'll find such poverty and the desire for a path. And that path is not there anymore because manufacturing jobs don't exist and they've been sent overseas. They just want a path. And most of them are working in service industries or low-paid warehouse jobs. So I don't think that the immigration of today is the immigration of yesterday. I don't think they're not coming from an industrialized society. And I think that we already have the people here that need employment. So why would you bus in more? That's my opinion.
All right. Well, we have a lot of material to get through here, John.
I know.
So I'm going to move on quickly to the next topic, which is how to make trade policy work for manufacturing. And when we were sort of summarizing things from the book last week, you talked a little bit about companies being asked to make 10 or 20 parts versus 10,000 parts, and how that scale of manufacturing has moved overseas, which, and obviously anybody who knows anything about manufacturing knows to make one of something is very expensive. To make 1 million of something becomes exponentially cheaper. So talk a little bit about that scale and how trade policy, leveling the playing field, can help bring that volume business back to the United States, which makes American manufacturers more competitive.
Yeah, there's the common line is, made in America goods are so expensive, but they don't see what's going on behind the curtains. Economy of scale is something that I think needs to be taught in schools along with compound interest. The power of compound interest is, in my opinion, equal to the power of economy of scale. An economy of scale means you can provide a lot cheaper per part item if you're making 100,000 pieces as opposed to if you're making 10 pieces. And because you buy more raw materials to start with. You have the incentive to automate things and buy robotic cells when you have that volume. And so trade policy can, first of all, a lot of trade policy isn't being enforced. We have some good laws and they're not being enforced in any way. But the biggest one that I think will help American manufacturers provide affordable goods to Americans at scale is tariffs. Because then companies will move back here to get around that tariff, and ultimately that'll lead to a lowering in price of American-made goods. Go ahead.
Well, I can tell you firsthand. I mean, when we shifted from running the Oneida factory, which was making $230 million a year worth of product, and we had to take these machines that were set up in lean lines using the latest technology and manufacturing processes to do 10 to 50,000 piece runs. And we started out Liberty Tabletop making 50 to 300 piece runs. That was a huge headache for Matt Roberts. I mean, my goodness, by the time he got the machine set up, he was done with his run. So half the pieces that he made were setup pieces, and the other 50% was the cost. It's all one big blob of cost, right? Imagine if 0.01% were your setup pieces and the rest of it was cost, what that would do to your efficiencies, the setup times for setting up those different processes that went through. So we actually had to go back to batch manufacturing, which was in a way a step backwards, but necessary in order to produce things at the scale we needed to produce them at. And what that did to our costs was it made our costs rise significantly.
Yeah. And I had I think I write about this in my book. My engineering manager used to work for a big company, and they got a clutch job to make clutches, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of clutches. And by the time they bought the robotic cells, designed the tooling and fixturing, bought the cutting tools, made prototypes, wrote the programs for every different cutting tool, automated it all. They had 2 years and millions of dollars in this product, and they got the job for 5 years, and then the job moved overseas and they lost it all. Now, if you had a 50% tariff in place, that's less likely to happen. So that's why these foreign countries are able to constantly undercut our own manufacturers, because they get the bigger batch jobs because the tariffs don't protect our own industries. And so I think that, there's significant other things that we can do on trade policy, specifically with like the de minimis law, and how that allows any item that's under $800 can be shipped from communist China or India, and it doesn't have to be declared. Well, what that means is you look around your house and how many items are under $800? Most of them are. And that means, foreign nationals can constantly undercut American-made goods. And the de minimis law was written because items of minimal value shipped to family members when people were traveling. I think this law was written in the 30s. And somehow it got perverted. The average de minimis rate, ours is $800. Any item under $800. The average, I think it's around $11. So the rest of the countries in the world, if you want to ship something in there, if it's over $11, you have to declare it, and it gets looked at customs. Us, $800. It doesn't make sense. We're opening up our borders in a way that no nation can continue to grow on.
Well, Rita and I did an entire show on the de minimis issue a couple weeks ago, and went into great detail about what it is and how it's impacted us. And basically, the impact on us was when the 25% tariffs were put in place, we expected to gain a 25% advantage against some of the imports coming in. What we found was that absolutely nothing happened. And it's because the folks out there that are driving the import model, they're pretty smart. They figured out the workaround, and the workaround was de minimis, because I don't know what percentage of flatware orders are over $800, but I'm guessing it's pretty close to none.
Pretty big. Yeah.
Right. We're going to be coming back here shortly with our final segment and try and get to the end of your book, John. Hopefully everybody will buy it and do a deeper dive into this than we're able to in this hour. We will be right back after we pay a couple bills with the Made in America Hour with John Gardner.
Welcome back to Home Talk USA with Michael King. Do you have questions about your next home improvement project or home repairs? Now you can chat with verified home repair and home improvement experts in just minutes. Get the help you need with HomeTalk.expert. That's HomeTalk.expert. We invite you to visit us at HomeTalkUSA.com, one of the best resources for home improvement information around today. Your best life begins with your best home, and there's no place like HomeTalk. That's HomeTalkUSA.com. And now, back to the #1 home improvement radio program in the country with the man from the Bayou Land, your host, the Cajun contractor, Michael King.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here with John Gardner, author of the book, Manufacture Local, How to Make America the Manufacturing Superpower of the World. And we're going through the different chapters of this book, briefly touching on the different topics he discusses. And the next section is called How to Rebuild the Industrial City. I spoke with Jim Stuber several episodes ago, who wrote a book called What If Things Were Made in America Again? And it talked about the devastating impact that globalization has had on cities and towns that he grew up in. Coincidentally, Pennsylvania is one of them. So, John, talk a little bit about this chapter and the different things that you touch on that are relevant and interesting.
My heart really goes out to the industrial cities because I grew up going to Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Cincinnati. I'd read a lot of books about the might of Detroit and Henry Ford's Detroit and Baltimore. There was one plant in Baltimore, Bethlehem Steel, that I think it was in the 60s. It employed 32,000 people at one plant. And that one plant produced 8% of the world's steel at one plant. And all that's gone now. That's all gone. And now you look at the inner cities of our magnificent cities. They're beautiful cities. And you see them decaying, and you see the youth there not having a lot of options on the menu of life. They have the option of working in fast food. They have the option of doing really well in sports and being an athlete, or maybe getting into music or joining a gang, or the very, very small percentage of them doing well enough in school in spite of all the adversity around them to maybe get a scholarship. And I just think that there's more, civilization rose by being able to do stuff with your hands and having a skill set and being a productive laborer. And so I think the manufacturing industry reasserting itself in these big cities would do a lot for them to rebuild them.
Well, that's a nice segue into the next chapter of the book, how to become a self-sufficient nation. And I'm going to start off with a quote from one of our favorite guys, Alexander Hamilton, who said, there's no nation stronger than the self-sufficient nation. And that's a direct quote from Alexander and from your book. So talk a little bit about how that not only strengthens our military base, it strengthens our people, but it also provides us with economic security.
So the economic security part is, you're right, it's so key. 80% of global trade is based on goods, a physical, tangible thing. Only 20% is based on service. So when we embrace service, intangible item like a realtor, we lose our ability to, once you lose manufacturing skill sets, they're very hard to get back. They're a practice. Like a doctor has to do his job. He has to operate on people to get good at what he's doing. When you offshore steel production, you lose all the secondary industries around it, like black oxide and heat treat, and then you lose those as well, and it becomes a chain effect, a house of cards that falls down once you lose that core industry. What was your original question? I got off on another tangent there.
Well, we were talking about being self-sufficient as a nation and how important it is to economic security
it just makes sense economically. If 80% of the world trade is based on a manufactured good, we want to embrace that. And the Defense Department released a study very recently that said for every dollar invested in the manufacturing industry, $2.79 in economy is created, giving it the largest multiplying effect of any sector in the American economy. More than technology, more than anything else, and also creates 7 to 10 jobs that are reliant on that manufacturing job. So it has a massive multiplying effect for the economy, giving us economic security.
Well, we're going to finish up here with one of my favorite topics. People think about Made in America as a movement, as something that's patriotic. We built an entire brand around the Made in America brand. The last chapter of your book, you show a bunch of advertisements about how patriotic purchasing used to be a thing, and we need to make that a thing again, don't we?
Well, first of all, to make it a thing, you have to give it value. You have to protect it. I think people who falsely advertise that they are made in America, and there could be, we need to all have, there's already these standards that exist, but there's a lot of people that falsely advertise and they buy it from China or somewhere else. That should be on par with counterfeiting, and people should go to jail for that. But I also think that there's many other ways to add value to that. The government should be able to certify you as they have certifications if you're in an LGBTQ business or a veterans business or a minority business. They have all these other certifications. They don't have a certification for a Made in America business that gives you value. And I think you should get better loans. I think you should get tax credits. I think that there should be a marketing, an incentive to market. You can tax credits for marketing that you are a made in America business. But I think that the government should have to come and check out your business and give you a certification for that. But I think it should be of immense value.
Well, I can tell you right now that, had we developed the Liberty Tabletop brand and we couldn't put the Made in America, Made in USA label on that, our sales would be a fraction of what they are today. We just had a couple come in today from out of town, and we hear this all the time. Thank you for making it here in the United States. And to all maybe the inventors from Rita's Hour that stuck with us, that are out there listening, what an incredible marketing tool. And we need to take that message forward to the public beyond just an election cycle. We need to have that be a constant droning because the American consumer wants it. And if they're reminded of it and they're provided with the correct information, they'll act upon it.
Americans want made American goods. It's just our government's not helping made America goods to get in their hands. I first started. I had an invention, and I have a patent, and for my cutting tool. And my dad invented it, but I patented and made a prototype. And I started off trying to make it overseas. And once I started working with the machine shops close to me, that's when I was able to build a company because my manufacturing was close to me.
Thank you very much, John. Again, this is John Gardner, Manufacturer Local, How to Make America the Manufacturing Superpower of the World. John, thank you for being with us. And again, your book can be found on
Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Walmart, and bookshop.org.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back next week with another exciting edition of the Made in America Hour.
Thanks
Greg
for
Owens.
having me, Greg. Thanks a lot.
Broadcast